Hey guys, hey, thanks for joining today. Hey, today I kind of wanted to do something that I don't normally do, and I wanted to talk about attachment theories and attachment connections that, primarily men tend to have, from infancy on growing up, and how those affect relationships that they're in today. So basically just a little bit of overview here. An attachment theory, it's a strong emotional and physical bond that an infant has with one or more primary caregivers. And with that in mind, it is a very critical portion of personal development. I mean, it's classified in developmental psychology, so it's, something that I think that everyone kind of maybe needs to look into if you're having problems with, like, a significant other or, a friend or anything like that. Basically, long story short, as a child grows into adulthood, the type of attachment that was formed in childhood more or less is going to be the type of attachment that they will have in adulthood. So basically, with that being said, the main question that we need to ponder here is this. The attachment figure, the parental, caregiver, things like that, when the child was an infant, were they close by? Were these caregivers responsive? Were they attentive? Were they emotionally, available? If yes, then generally the child will form what's called a secure attachment. And with that being said, that's basically just where the child feels loved and secured and confident, and, they're emotionally taken care of, and they're social, and, that sort of thing. If the answer is no, generally this experiences the individual, the child himself, into adulthood, will experience, anxiety, separation. They have huge bouts of depression, loss and things like that. And this generally kind of stems where, the caregiver was not very attentive or loving or nurturing, just pretty much overall basically flat and uninvolved. And that is very sad. But let's just go ahead and jump right into it, okay? So basically, there's a debate. There's 3 to 4 types of, different attachments. I'm going to say 4 because I'm going to go into a little more in depth. The first one I want to start with is secure. A secure attachment is basically a warm, pleasant, affectionate, feeling. It's a positive view of yourself. You are easily, emotionally close to people. You can carry on relationships. You adjust well in social settings, well in relationships. You are easily able to emotionally connect with others. There's a very, very high chance that these people are generally very compatible, with intimacy. They're very comfortable with that. They have great satisfaction in relationships, and also that they can be depended on, and the others can depend on them as well. Basically, a secure attachment, this is promoted in early childhood, and a key issue here too is that the parental unit, the caregiver, they are emotionally available, but they can also regulate positive and negative emotions in a child, and that's something that's very, very, very important. So the next ones that we're going to go on to is the insecure and the avoidant type, which I hate, but we're going to go on to insecure right now. Insecure is also known as anxious preoccupied, and with that being said, this is more or less, more females tend to have this than men. This is basically where the person seeking the attachment, now in relationships, they want more of an emotional, kind of intimate, connection, but others are not that willing to be that close with them. But these people feel like they must have close relationships. They feel undervalued. So they're constantly seeking approval, recognition, reassurance. They do seek high levels of intimacy. But with that being said, when they do seek those, they become overly dependent on those attachments, those people, in the relationships, their attachments, and that spawns codependency, which I also talked about earlier in a different video. So, but these people tend to have a less positive, kind of view of self. They're very anxious whenever they're in close proximity or, in contact with, their partner, significant other. They do doubt their worth as a person. And generally, these people, they tend to blame themselves for a lack of responsiveness from their, significant other, the attachment that they formed. And all of this, like I said earlier, this does stem from childhood, and also, they have high levels of emotional expression, and some people just are not very comfortable with that. They're very, very impulsive. in relationships, they just boom, jump right in like, woo, you know, we're dating now. What's up? So, okay, so I'm going to go on to the next one. The next one is the dismissive avoidant type. Okay, and this one I really hate. I discussed this earlier, more or less. This is the worst kind of attachment that there is. Basically, this category is where a lot of narcissists fall. Basically, these men, which is, you know, primarily what I'm going with, they value independence. They like to be self-sufficient. They are very comfortable without close relationships. Like, whatever, they can go without it. You know, and they do not depend on others, and they do not want others to depend on them. You know, and that's kind of no way to live. But basically, the big concept here is the independence that these gentlemen, you know, desire and portray. That's a way to avoid any attachment altogether. Okay, you know, and I can't stress that enough. This generally stems from, you know, possible child abuse, maybe some sexual abuse in the home, you know, things like that, just to avoid this attachment altogether. You know, they also deny needing any close relationships, you know, or anything. They view relationships as unimportant. They view these relationships as flat and uninvolved, just like the caregiver, you know, but they tend to seek less intimacy with attachments. They tend to sometimes have like a defensive kind of character, like a defensive nature, you know, about them. Oftentimes, more often than not, these gentlemen, they suppress their feelings. They hide their feelings, you know, and basically the way that these men deal with rejection, being a dismissive avoidant, is they distance themselves from the attachment. So it's kind of like that whole out of sight, out of mind, you know, kind of thing. And that's very, very sad in and of itself. I think we all, you know a few people like that. You know, me in particular, I know quite a few. So let's go on to the next one. The next one is the fearful avoidant, okay? And this is more often than not men. This is where most of the men, you know, kind of fall through. They're very uncomfortable in getting into close relationships. They want closeness, but they have a difficulty trusting other people. And it's more or less an inability to trust that had been learned from childhood. Maybe, you know, the caregiver wasn't around, they couldn't trust them, they harmed them, I mean, the list goes on and on. You know, and basically these type of men, it is really sad because they tend to have mixed feelings about close relationships. And this I cannot stress enough with fearful avoidance. They desire to have an emotionally close relationship, but they are not whatsoever comfortable with emotional closeness. And that kind of, you know, that kind of hinders, you know, them from really kind of, you know, moving on in life and forming any kind of attachment and things like that. But basically, they see themselves as unworthy of any type of, you know, responsiveness, reciprocation, anything like that. They do not trust the intentions of those. So that also, you know, kind of ties in with the inability to trust. Overall, basically, they just seek less intimacy. They suppress and deny feelings. You know, they're not comfortable expressing emotions or feelings. Like PDAs would probably be something, you know, kind of like, you know, I don't want to hold your hand, I don't know if I should kiss in public, you know, that sort of thing. So they may not be a player, but they might just be, you know, a little fucked up and, you know, not be comfortable doing that. Okay, so then we're going to move on to the relationship outcomes. This is always sad. Okay, the relationship outcomes. Basically, as I stated earlier, the attachment styles from childhood will directly correlate with those in adulthood. You know, and generally, you know, the secure attachment, they tend to have very high satisfaction, you know, in relationships. They're more intimate. They can open up. They discuss things a little bit more. They're easily able to cope and deal with conflicts. You know, they have longer lasting relationships. They have better communication. You know, they have perceived better support, you know, from their partner. And, you know, and that's awesome. And that's the way it should be. Basically, in the secure attachment here, the relationship outcome is that they do tend to have better, longer lasting relationships because they do value commitment. And so a level of commitment to them is very, very important. So then I'm going to go to the anxious preoccupied with that. I hate those things. Bye, bug. Okay. Anxious preoccupied. Okay. Basically, these are people that are able to find long-lasting relationships, but they tend to be very, very unhappy. They have anxiety, like abandonment, you know, kind of issues here, self-doubt of their own self-worth in the relationship, and that is sad, you know. But these people, you have to understand that with the anxious, preoccupied, being the fact that it stems from abandonment issues, these men will generally stay in this relationships. They do want that closeness and they do want that relationship, but they stay and they're unhappy. But they stay because they don't want to have that abandonment happen again. They don't want to be abandoned. So the mentality behind this is, okay, well, I would rather, you know, stay in a relationship where I'm unhappy instead of someone abandoning me. And that's terrible. That's horrible. You know, so I'm going to go to the next one. The next one is fearful avoidant. I know some... I was going to say, I'm going to skip over that. Anyway, these men tend to have horrible relationships. You know, they tend to avoid relationships, intimacy altogether, avoid closeness. They can be, you know, very loving and happy and compassionate one day, and then the next, it's like, what the fuck? Like, they're distant. You know what I mean? Basically, this type of man, it's very closely related to the dismissive avoidant, which is also the worst. And basically, this guy grew up with trust issues. Okay, so this guy's been fucked up for a very long time, you know, which is not his fault. You know, his caregiver. You know, so oftentimes he can give you the cold shoulder, and this is because this guy, he juggles in between two modes of, do I open up and share with her, or if I open up too much, is she going to be able to hurt me? You know, so on and so forth. So what happens to these men is generally they pull away. They're afraid of getting hurt. They're afraid of hurting someone else. You know, rejection, all the three insecure attachment styles. Basically, a man's attachment style has been shaped by his relationships, whether or not they've been unhealthy, unstable, roller coaster, you know, and the relationships probably could have caused a lot of pain, hurt, heartbreak, things like that. Past traumas make a large part of his core beliefs. And that's very sad. You know, so by pulling away, he is demonstrating to you his inability to trust people. It's not an unwillingness, it's an inability. And that in and of itself, like that breaks my heart. So I'm not going to go into that too much. Okay. But anyway, you know, so fear and hurt, you know, basically the general distrust of people, insecurity of judgment, basically in the past, he has been, you know, judged or critiqued for, you know, sharing emotions, ridiculed, things like that. So in turn, his reluctance to share emotion because he fears that the woman will judge him. Okay. And then he also has the fear of alienating females. This generally stems from low self-esteem. These type of men, they don't like to share undesirable traits. You know, and I mean, I can understand. I think everybody can. You know, they don't want heartbreak, but we also have to take into an account, you know, physical ailments, mental illness, socially inept, you know, harboring unwanted feelings, that sort of thing. Basically, they override emotion with thought. They're generally afraid of losing these women. They pull away, and the reason they pull away is to rebuild their emotional wall. So it's basically them taking a step back so they can get comfortable, so they feel safe again, so they can, you know, go back to more or less the way they, you know, things were in the beginning. But basically, just don't overthink this. These guys are not running from you. They're just, you're not losing significance in their life. Ultimately, these type of guys, if they do keep coming back, that's a great sign, and they do keep opening up to you, even if it's that much. These type of guys will stay by your side. You know, they're just a little fucked up. You just got to give them time. Okay. A couple other points here I just want to get to real quick is that, you know, with him withdrawing, he takes the power away for you to hurt him. Okay, so if he opens up to you and you can hurt him with all these feelings and shit like that he shared with you, when he pulls back like, oh, hey, what the fuck, you know, he's taking that power back. Okay, you know, just let him have his distance. That's all you can do. Basically, and I'm going to tie this up with the texting, our little fun thing. Texting and communication, avoidance, they tend to only text, never call. They do this to control the amount of communication. They also do this to keep you at arm's length. They maintain emotional distance in the relationship, and this is done by texting. They're less likely to show empathy or relationships. So basically, texting equals maintaining distance in a relationship. Okay, the insecure type, I'm going to speed through this real quick, is generally abandonment issues. They consistently text, boom, 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 boom. You know, they feel inferior. They have anxiety. Oh my God, my partner's not with me. Oh my God, do they stop loving me? And I mean, we're talking all of this in 10 fucking minutes. It's a little excessive, you know. I probably, no, I would just cut that off, but that's me. Anyway, so dismissive avoidant, okay, we have our ghost texter. This type, he'll text every few weeks, once or twice, pretty much about it. You know, he's out of the picture, back in. Basically, the only thing I can say with this is get rid of his ass and take control of texting before it takes control of you. And if he's only texting, you know, there's probably some other personal issues going on there. As always, thank you guys for joining, and join me tomorrow. We're going to have a great discussion then. Bye.